in a little bit later, and that's okay too. So my name is Michelle Gross, and I am one of the founders and currently the president of the group Communities United Against Police Brutality. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to give you a little bit about our organization first, and we're going to tell you about one of our little projects that we're working on right now that we think is pretty important for people to know about. And then after that, this is what our agenda is going to look like in terms of our Know Your Rights portion of the training. So this is a two-part training. The first part is about learning your rights when dealing with police. The second part, if you're interested, that you can stay on for, is the part two, if you will, is the a train the trainer training. So we'll teach you how to teach other people about their rights as well. But the first part will be all about knowing your rights and things like that. So just a little bit about our organization. Communities United Against Police Brutality is an all-volunteer organization. We're in our 22nd year, and we are based in Minnesota. So because we're based in Minnesota and we know Minnesota law, we don't really go outside of Minnesota, and because we're all volunteers, and that'd be a little bit too much for us. But we do kind of three areas of work. One is that we provide advocacy for people dealing with the effects of police brutality. So we have a 24-hour hotline. We hook people up with lawyers. We help people get, get evidence in their own cases and things like that, and that kind of thing. But we always make it clear we're about social justice, not social services. So if people want our help, they need to come to our meetings and they need to get involved and help other people. And that way we build a movement. The second thing we do is we do a lot of things about policies and practices, legislation and things like that. So we have several bills at the legislature right now, that sort of stuff. And then the third area is a lot of education, and that's part of what we're doing tonight is part of that education, teaching people about their rights, teaching people how to document police conduct, teaching people how to teach other people about their rights and things like that. So all of those kinds of things are things that we do as an organization, just a ton of different work and projects. And if you're ever looking for a good organization to come spend your time with, I will tell you that we would love to have you. As an all-volunteer group, like I said, we meet every Saturday, and we can get you that information if you want to share your email address. And right now we're meeting virtually, and then a lot of our work gets done through work groups that meet throughout the week. So this is pretty exciting. To me, I feel like, it's a great organization to be with, and we're getting a lot done, and a lot of, very productive things come out of the organization. So with that, I would like to, I'm trying to see if Darlene is with us yet. Okay. Okay.
I don't see her yet, Michelle.
Yeah, I don't either. Okay. Not sure. She's having trouble or what? Okay, so what we want to tell you a little bit about, though, is about the Department of Justice. The Department of, Darlene, are you here?
This meeting is about what to do when you're.
Okay, so we're going to kind of just give you a quick rundown about one of the projects we're working on that we think is particularly important and that people need to know about. And that is investigation that's happening into the Minneapolis police by the Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Justice. And this is to us kind of pretty exciting because we've been trying for a pretty long time to get the Minneapolis police to straighten themselves up, and they aren't particularly willing to straighten up. So it's good that the Department of Justice is going to come here because they actually can force these guys to, basically straighten up and fly right. And so what we have done is we spent a lot of our time last summer holding events with the community to gather people's thoughts about what it is that they wanted to see different about the police. So we've got a pretty large size list of community demands. We also sent 30 canvassers around the whole city multiple times to gather people's experiences with the police. And we turned over about 10,000 documents and about 1,500 experiences to the the Department of Justice and also to the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, which is also investigating the city. So we're pretty excited about that because we think this is a very real opportunity to actually get some changes to happen. Andrew, you were going to talk about this also, so I'm going to turn this over to you.
All right, can you guys hear me fine?
Yes, very well.
All right, so as Michelle was saying, we have gathered a lot of information for the DOJ, and they have been doing their own research into police policies, trainings, procedures, and things like that. Now the DOJ has taken that research and the information we've provided them, and they're examining it to see if they think the MPD has a problem. Now, we all know the answer there is an obvious yes. The next step is going to be the mayor and the MPD reps will sit down with the Department of Justice and negotiate a court enforceable consent decree. And in theory, a city can refuse a consent decree, and in that case, the Department of Justice would have to take them to court and sue them to make them to agree to it. But in general, the details of what changes in policies, training, transparency, and community engagement happens in that negotiation process. And that's also where they will be making decisions about who will have oversight over the consent decree process. And that's where the community will still need to be involved. First, we have to demand a robust consent decree that includes all the areas we think there needs to be change. Now, obviously, the city is going to be arguing on the other half, saying, "Oh, we only need to make these very minimal changes." And another really important part for the community voice to be heard is influence and who is chosen to be the monitor, to who have oversight over the consent decree. If the consent decree gets monitored by a bunch of retired New York City police officers, they're obviously going to have a view that's very favorable towards the police. And there are some groups like that who do jockey for and frequently get appointed to being in these types of positions. So we really have to pay attention to who our government is going to choose to enforce this consent decree once it gets put in place. So when our mayor starts talking about who should be the monitor, we will likely call on our community to make phone calls, sign petitions, and have influence on who the monitor is going to be. And then even when we get the consent decree and it includes all the items that we want, and we have oversight by people we trust, we're still not done. I mean, these changes take a long time, but once those two pieces are in place, we still need to monitor the monitor. And we also have to monitor that the information that the PD is passing on to those monitors is actually what's going on. The monitors will be able to look at a lot of the training and a lot of the data that's being given, but it's only the people who are on the street level that have interaction with the police that are going to have the real information about how things are going on. And if the elements of the decrees are making the kinds of changes in the street level interactions that our community wants. And just a quick example of this is, consent decree might push for new de-escalation training and duty intervene training. We obviously don't want, we want that, but we don't want a policy where police just show up, sit in the chairs, don't pay attention. We are looking for these changes to be meaningful. If we are going to do more, if we're going to train the police more, if we're going to have new policies, we need to make sure that the new officers are getting trained in these new policies and getting this new training. We need to make sure that the police officers who are getting their yearly reviews are being judged on how well they make use of this training. And when police are being considered to be for promotions to sergeants, training officers, pieces like that, they are judged on how well they are following the elements of the consent decree. If we don't have pieces like that and the community behind it, then the training and the changes can just be window dressing. So please, hopefully you will be able to be there when we're calling on you to reach out to your council people and the mayor and pieces like that. Michelle, do you have anything to add, or does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Andrew. I think you said it very well. And this is a community project. This is something we all need to be part of. And if we want to have the police answer to us,
Hello?
and we darn well better make that happen. So, hello. So, all righty, we are going to get started here on the actual training now at this point. But if you're interested in being part of this, that's one of many projects that we're working on, but we think it's a very important one. So if you're interested in any of our projects, you can drop your email into the chat, and we'll follow up with you with information about how to attend our meetings and how to get involved. So thank you all so much. So we're going to get started now, like I said, talking about your rights when dealing with police, which I think, of course, is a very important topic. But before I even get into talking about the actual rights themselves, I want to talk about a couple of things with you, okay? First of all, one of the things that people will say to me, because I'm a fat old white lady, right? And they'll say, well, oh, you're teaching us about these rights, and it's easy for you to exercise those rights. And you know what? I agree. It is shamefully true that it is easy for me as a white woman, especially a little bit older white woman, to be able to exercise my rights. And it's a little harder for, say, a young African-American man to maybe exercise his rights. But the bottom line is you have these rights. What we're going to talk about tonight is going through to make sure you know about your rights, and then it's up to you to decide when and how to exercise them. And there are times that it's a little bit different, a little bit safer maybe to exercise your rights, and maybe there's times that are a little bit less safe. But you cannot actually decide whether or not to exercise your rights unless you actually know what those rights are. So, like I said, it might be easier for you to exercise your rights at 3 p.m. at a busy intersection than it is at 3 a.m. and it's you in an alleyway with 5 cops. I get it, right? But you can't make a decision at all if you have never known what your rights are in the first place. And way too many people give their rights away. And I will talk to you about what I mean by that as we go along. So a lot of people give their rights away, and then we can't get them back for you after that. Then it's too late. So let me ask you all a question, and hopefully maybe a couple of people will join in and answer the question. What is the role of police? And so you can unmute yourselves and answer that. What's the role of police in our society? What's the role of police? What's their job? I'm sorry?
To protect and serve.
Protect and serve. Okay, that sounds like a really good marketing slogan. Just
Right.
saying.
That's what they say.
That's their marketing slogan, isn't it? Right? I'm
My
pretty sure
understanding of the police role is if you break down the word officer and you get overseer. Overseers would work for the plantation owners and go grab the runaway enslaved people and bring them back to the plantation. And I don't think anything has changed since then.
Okay, so that's a little bit more political, realistically kind of thing. I'm going to break it down for you the easiest way possible. Okay. The job, role, whatever term you want to use of police is to determine if a crime has occurred. And I think, by the way, your historical knowledge is very good. We have a course on our website, cuapp.org, that's called Police Brutality 101. And it goes into a lot of that history of the Patter-rollers and the Pinkertons and all that stuff. So I would definitely say check that out. But in its purest form, we know that there's other things that cops do, but in its purest form, what you can really say is that the role of police is to determine if a crime has occurred, try to figure out who's involved in that crime, and gather evidence for those people's prosecution, right? Think about it like that. Determine if a crime has occurred, determine who might be involved, gather evidence for prosecution. Okay, that's the job, right? So, that's their job. What's your job? What's your job?
Stay safe.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I always say it like this. Your job is to come out of every encounter with police as unharmed as possible. And that means not physically harmed, not legally harmed, whatever the case may be, right? Your job is to come out as unharmed as possible. So I want you to keep that in the back of your mind when you are thinking about how and when to exercise your rights, and that, and to be familiar with your rights. Keep that in the back of your mind. Your job is to come out as unharmed as possible. Fair enough? Okay, very good. So we'll talk about that. Now, first thing we're going to talk about, okay, well, let me get to the next slide here. Oh, we talked about that already. Okay. So just a real quick thing that I want to mention to you is, along the way, you're going to have questions, and I'm going to encourage you to answer the questions when you're not talking. If you don't mind muting, that would be great. So that way we're not on top of each other. But in the meantime, feel free to unmute and ask your questions. Prefer if you wouldn't tell long stories so we can get through the material, but ask your questions, that kind of thing. And along the way, we're going to teach you 4 sets of magic words. We're going to teach you 4 sets of magic words. Emma, could you mute whoever's clunking around dishes back there or whatever? Thank you. Okay, so along the way, we're going to teach you some magic words that help you understand, what your, ways that you can safely exercise your rights. Okay, so first things first, there are 3 kinds of encounters that you can have with police. The first is what's called, we would, maybe laypersons would say, friendly chat. The actual legal term for it is consensual encounter. That means that you're talking to the police on your own free will. Well, at least they think you are. And so, let's talk about going through, we'll kind of go through those. The next is being detained, next is being arrested. Well, we'll get back to those other ones in a second. So let's say that you are walking down the street, oops, and you are minding your own business, having your little day, right? Officer comes up to you and says, hey, what are you doing around here? This is kind of a high crime neighborhood. Let's, why are you here? Can you show me some ID? All right. People, either raise your hands or use your voices. Doesn't matter to me which one. How many people think you have to show an ID?
No, you don't.
Okay, so you say no. What about other folks? Do other folks think you need to show an ID?
No, you
I
don't.
agree. I'm going to say no.
Okay, so a bunch of people are saying no. I'm going to tell you the interesting thing. In Minnesota, you'd be exactly right. You don't have to in Minnesota, but there are 24 states in the union that you do. So depending on where you live, you got to know what the laws are where you live. Make sense?
Yeah, I was going to say, I wasn't sure. I was going to say, I think that I live in New York City, and I know if we do not show ID, then they can actually detain us for not having ID.
Actually, you know what? That's actually in New York State is not one of the 24 states. They are just telling people that stuff.
Yeah, that's a fact.
But
That's
it's
a
not
fact.
true.
No, I didn't say they can arrest us. I said they detain us.
Well,
They'll
being detained
detain
is
us.
pretty much the same as being arrested, except that you don't go
Right.
downtown. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But in New York, they're not supposed to be doing that. And in fact, a group of lawyers that I've worked with before actually got a lawsuit to end that stop and frisk nonsense. And they're not supposed to be doing all that, but they do it anyway, and we know it. So this is one of the problems about them violating people's rights, right? And they do it because people either don't know or don't want to go through the hassle of fighting with them about it, right? Arguing with them or whatever. But there are, like I said, 24 states, about half the states in the union, where you do have to show an ID. So it's up to you to find that out in your state laws, right? Let's say that you live in a state like Minnesota and New York. Let's say you live in a place where you don't actually have to show an ID. Officers are talking to you and, hey, what are you doing around here? This is a high crime neighborhood. Can I see some ID? How are you going to get yourself out of that situation? How? Anybody got any ideas?
None.
Can you repeat that?
Okay, so you're walking down the street, minding your own business, and cop says, hey, what are you doing around here? Can I see some ID? How do you get yourself out of that?
I would ask the officer, have I committed a crime?
Or is there a reason that you've stopped me?
Right,
That's
exactly.
it. Those are all interesting
You
approaches.
gotta have probable cause to stop me. So what's your probable cause to stop me?
Actually, they have to have reasonable
ID.
suspicion to stop you, but that's a different story.
Well, and that's why I would say, is there a reason? Because people see that as less confrontational, but it still gets to the point.
Well, I'm going to give you one, what I would consider to be a little bit better set of magic words. So here's your first set of magic words, okay? Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? That's your first set of magic words. The reason I like those magic words, now I'm not, you're grown, I'm not trying to tell you what to say, but I like that it shows them that you're using a tiny bit of legal lingo, right? And it's showing them that you know your rights. Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? I think if you say, why did you stop me? Or any of that kind of stuff like that, it might come off as a little bit confrontational and that sort of thing. I think it's best to show them you know your rights. Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? And I'm going to tell you in a second what being detained means. But if they say, oh, no, I'm not detaining you. I just was talking to you. Okay, officer, have a nice day. Bye. And just get yourself out. See ya, right? And get yourself out of there.
If I can jump in here really quick, from what I've seen, when you're using these more conversational questions, you start to have a dialogue with the officers, and the officers are pretty well trained at taking a lot of those conversational cues and turning them against you. So, hey, so that's why a simple phrase like this, you're not answering their questions. You're not going down the path that they're trying to lead you. You're going down your own path. And I think that's part of the important reason why this phrase is so useful.
Exactly. So I like that also. And I also think, in a situation like this, what you're doing is you're dismissing yourself from it. You're not saying, do I need your permission to leave? Any of this stuff. It's like, am I being detained? Oh, no, I'm not. Okay, bye. Just dismiss yourself from the situation. And so I think this is a powerful first set of magic words. And so we are going to practice it together. And I know you're all going to think I'm a dorky person for doing this, but I'm going to tell you something. I am a retired nurse. I taught CPR for 25 years. And one of the things that I learned a long time ago is that you cannot just stand up in front of a room and go, okay, here's how you do CPR. Put your hands in the middle of the chest and push hard 100 times a minute, blah, 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 right? People need to put their hands on the mannequin. So this is my version of us putting your hands on the mannequin, okay? You need to practice these words so that they come out from you, when you need them to come out from you. So you'll remember them, okay? So I'm going to say it to you again, then we're going to say it together, and then I'm going to have you say it one more time so I can hear you, okay? Everybody ready? Okay, yes. So the words are, officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? Everybody unmute yourselves. Let's hear you.
Officer, am
I being detained or
am I being detained or am I free to go?
Okay, let's try that one more time because it was a whole lot of kind of talking. So let's try that one. And I want you to just practice it one more time also. Ready? Officer.
Am I being detained or am I free to go?
Good. Commit that one to memory because that's going to come in handy when you can dismiss yourself from the situation. Make sense? And like I said, you can change it up if you need to, but I like the idea of using some legal words so that they get it. So then what does all that about being detained actually mean? Okay. What does being detained mean? Being detained means this. Okay? It means that they have reasonable suspicion, which is the lowest level of proof, by the way. It's very small level of proof. They have reasonable suspicion that you were involved in a crime, and they can hold you in the same area for a short period of time to determine whether or not you were involved in that crime. So here's an example. Let's say that what you do for a living is you work at entertaining children at birthday parties. Okay. And so you have a gig and you're going to go entertain some kids at a birthday party, and you get your little clown suit on and you get yourself all ready to go to work, and then you're walking down to the bus stop. Well, let's say that some person dressed up in a clown suit just robbed the convenience store down the street or the bank or whatever, right? The cops see you walking down the street in your clown suit. That's reasonable suspicion because somebody with a clown suit just robbed the convenience store. So that would be reasonable suspicion to stop you and detain you. And then they do what's called a show up. And a show up is when they bring somebody from that business, they keep you there, and then they bring that person over, and then that person looks at you and they say, oh, you're, that person says, no, you're not the one, because the person that robbed our store had green hair or something like that, right? So then the cops, and when they detain you, by the way, they can handcuff you for officer safety. They can only pat the outside of your clothing, never the inside, only the outside of your clothing, and only if they have, again, here's that word again, reasonable suspicion, believe that you have a weapon. In other words, a bulge coming out of your pocket or some reason to believe you have a weapon, and they cannot go in your pockets. They have to pat the outside again for their safety, and they can handcuff you. So then the person comes over and says, oh no, the person that robbed me had green hair. Then the cops are just going to take the cuffs off and say, get the hell out of here. They're not going to be nice about it. They're not going to say, hey, we're sorry. I sincerely doubt it, right? They're just going to be like, beat it, and now you can be on your way. Okay. So that's what being detained is. Detained means in the same area. So they're not taking you away or anything like that. They're bringing the other person to you and doing a show up. Make sense?
Michelle, can I chime
Yes.
in here real quick?
Sure.
So I've had instances where the police say that you fit the description of somebody who robbed somebody around here based upon a report that came over the radio. Now, you don't know what their identification was over the radio, but by the time you get to trial and by the time you get to court, they've already fabricated the records to fit their narrative.
That happens. It's true.
That's a fact.
It is a fact. I've seen it many times.
So in that situation, what do we do when we know we wasn't part of any crime and yet they're saying that you fit the description of something? What do you do then?
Okay, I'm going to tell you in just a second. Okay.
Okay.
Swear I'm going to. Okay.
All right.
Just haven't quite got there yet. Because
especially without having ID in accordance with that, because that's kind of what I was going at when I was talking to you about the ID situation and being detained. So in accordance with his, also adding how we'll be able to get out that without having ID also, please.
Right. Okay. So that's a great question. Let me come back to it though, if that's okay, because I want to give people a little piece of more information. Okay. So if they determine, like what you're talking about, that they think you quote unquote fit the description. Now, the sad reality of our society is that every black man fits the description.
That's a fact.
Let's be honest about it. Okay. Let's tell it, I'm sorry. I have to be real, be real, so we know what that is, right? I mean, they had an incident here where a cop was killed while he was eating pizza at a pizza shop. This was about 25 years ago almost, and maybe 30 even. And the police detained and not just detained, but arrested every black man in this town from age 15 to 90. You can't make it up.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, huge numbers of black men were at the prison. They knew that this hadn't happened, that all these guys did not shoot one gun with one bullet, right? They knew that, but this was the excuse. So they did that. So, let's talk about it. Okay. So but before we do though, let's get into talk about what being arrested is. Okay. If a person is arrested, they're being taken into custody. Okay. In order to arrest a person, to just stop a person, okay, is a reasonable suspicion. To arrest you, they have to have probable cause, which is a higher level of suspicion. That's the next higher level of suspicion. Still not very high, but it's enough, it's more, right? And if you get arrested, there's a few things that are going to happen. One is, of course, you're going to get handcuffed, okay? Second thing is the officers can now search your body and your possessions. Now, not body cavity searches. I don't mean like that, but I mean, they can go in your pockets to see if you have anything that they're not, that like dangerous to them or whatever. They can go through your backpack for an inventory. It's called, or they can go through your car. It's called a search incident to arrest. Okay. And so they can go through all those things and all of that stuff. My piece of advice when you're out and around in the streets is don't have stuff on you that you probably shouldn't have on you. I'm not judgmental. I don't care what you do. What you do in your own home is your business, not mine. I don't care. But it's best to don't have things on you that, might cause you problems. So but that's just a piece of advice. Do with it what you will. So, and then when you're getting arrested, they're going to put you in the squad car. Hopefully they're not going to manhandle you and beat you up and whatnot, but they'll put you in the squad car. You're going to jail. Okay, you're going to jail. Now, here's where some decisions get made. Okay. One of the things that you raised up is if you have an ID and you know you're not the one, if they ask you for an ID, you might decide to give it to them to show them that you're not the one. I'm working on a case of a man right now, for example, because I'm a paralegal in my work now. And one of the cases I'm working on is a man who was staying at like a halfway house type place. And he was just in the middle of the night, he got up to get some water, go to the bathroom or whatever. And the cops came in to arrest somebody in the place. But the one they were trying to arrest was not him, because that guy, the other one, did not show up in court or something, right? Some type of thing. So they came in to arrest him. My guy was not the guy. And they were looking for some guy named, I don't know, whatever, Drew or something. And my guy's name was Bill or something like that. And they put him in the car anyway. And he's like, who are you looking for? And they kept saying, Drew. And he's saying, that's not my name. That's not my name. Luckily, he happened to have his ID on him. But even still, they put him in the car anyway. They drove around for like an hour. And then they finally looked on the computer and realized that my guy looked nothing like the guy they were trying to arrest. Nothing at all. Completely different looking guy. Both African-American guys, but completely different looking guys. And he kept trying to say, this is my ID, you know, and you could see on the ID that it was him, you know, but the cops were just, no, you giving us a fake ID or whatever. And then suddenly they realized they had the wrong guy. And then they took him back to the house and all of this stuff and things like that. But, you know, so in that case, having an ID and showing it did kind of maybe help him a little bit. I don't know. But, you know, it's always a decision you have to make of like, what's the best way to get out of this situation? He's got a good lawsuit, by the way, because you can't just go dragging people out of their houses at 3 a.m, you know, and you don't even check the ID to see what the guy looks like. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? So he'll have a good lawsuit and things of that nature. But, you know, being arrested, like I said, then they're taking you away from here. They're putting you in the jail. We're going to talk all about what to do if you get arrested. I'll talk about that closer toward the end. But the thing that you're talking about, Aries and it looks like Dewan, yeah. So I want to just say to you all that you have to make a decision, and a lot of it might be depending on the time of the day. It might depending on, you know, if they look like they're determined to arrest you and you're like, look, man, no, you know, I'm not that person. Maybe you want to show your ID. You know, you don't have to. You've got a right not to. Am I being detained? Am I free to go? No, oh no, you're being detained. Then you might want to show your ID. It's up to you. It all depends on the circumstances. So that's why we're telling you about your rights, and then you get to decide how to exercise them.
Okay, Michelle, you still haven't answered my question on when the police know that they didn't have probable cause to arrest you, but then they changed their police reports and their records to fit their narrative, just to establish probable cause.
Right. We'll come back to that part in a few minutes, if that's okay with you. Yeah, but you know, I mean, police lying on police reports is, you know, every day and twice on Sunday, right? So we know that, but we'll come back and talk a little bit more about some of that stuff. Okay. So sorry, I don't mean to put you on hold on that, but just for a few minutes. Okay. Okay. So you're in the police squad car and they're like, you know, if you would just help us out here, we'd be able to, you know, get this matter cleared up and all that. So why don't you tell us, you know, what you know about people in here that are doing graffiti around the neighborhood? Or why don't you tell us can you give me somebody that's got a gun that I can get? You know, this and that, and the other thing. You know, they try to tell you they're going to be your friend, they're going to help you, right?
Right.
Let me tell you something. The cops are never about being your friend, and they're never about helping you. They are about determining who is involved in a crime, gathering evidence for those people's prosecution. That's their job. They are not your priest. They are not your confessor. They are not anything to help you. They're not your friends. Okay. So we are going to tell officers who ask us questions our next set of magic words. And I always start by saying officer because a little tiny bit of courtesy calms them down sometimes, you know, not always, but sometimes it can be a little calming effect, you know. So I'm going to say something like this. Officer, I'm going to remain silent. I want to speak to a lawyer.
Saved message. Hey, Robin, this is Joanne. Call me by
I'm sorry. Emma, could you please mute the person that's talking? Unless they're asking a question, but it didn't sound like we're having a conversation. Okay, so I think it's important to learn this set of magic words too, because we want to throw the cops off. You know, I don't know if you ever see these dumb shows like, you know, police SUV, whatever, all these stupid SVU, whatever these dumb shows are, right? And they always say things to people, and I'll talk about that in 1 second, but they always, you know, try to get people to talk and things like that. And you always see these people telling all this stuff like that and getting in trouble. And then if people won't talk, they always call it lawyering up, right? Lawyer up, lawyer up. So if they start doing all this, you know, the only way, and I think is in a way this answers Duan's question, partially answers it. And that's, it's hard for them to shape a narrative around you if you don't tell them anything, you know? And sometimes they ask you questions that are, you know, they seem innocent, right? They seem okay. You know, if I just tell this cop I didn't do it, if I just tell this cop I was down the street somewhere, you know, then maybe I can get myself out of it. Don't even begin to go there. Don't even begin to, because they will find a way to use every scrap of anything you say to them against you. You know, he was coming from an eastward direction, you know, and the bank was robbed in the eastward direction from between here and the bus stop or whatever it is, right? They'll find something to use. Don't give it to them. So, officer, I'm going to remain silent. I want to speak to a lawyer. So that's your second set of magic words. Everybody unmute, and we're going to practice that. Ready? Unmute, please. Everybody.
I'm going to remain silent. I want to speak to a lawyer.
Fabulous. Okay.
Officer, remain silent. I want to speak to a lawyer.
Remain silent. I want to speak to a
I'm going to
lawyer.
remain silent. I'd like to speak to a lawyer.
That's right. Yay, you guys are great. Great. Remember that. Yeah,
Michelle, can I ask a quick question?
of course.
If you're a witness to something, can you also not speak to the police and wait? I mean, like, is it good to give them your, I mean, if they ask, if they try to interview you, is it good to talk to them if you witness something? Sometimes, like if you do cop watching or something like that, is it good to talk to them and as a bystander, or is it better to actually not say anything?
Depends on what you witnessed and depends on if you want to be involved or not. You know, if you, that's a hard call. You know, if I'm at a protest and I see people maybe getting a little rowdy at the protest or whatever, and if a cop asks me to say what I saw, I'm gonna be like, oh, didn't see anything. Sorry, bad memory, you know? No.
Michelle, can I give an example of this?
Yes, please do, because I'm, you know, I mean, if you see somebody getting murdered, you might, I don't know. I can't tell you. It's up to you.
Well, because I remember
give an example.
In the Chauvin trial, I forgot his name, the man who anyway, there was some body cam footage of him saying, I'm not going to speak to the police as a witness because of his experience being bad experience being.
Yeah, well, see, here's the thing with witnesses. Michelle's correct. You have every legal right to decide to speak to a police officer or not if you're a witness of a crime. But one of the things is that police officers cannot detain you as a witness, and COAPB has sued the Minneapolis Police Department for detaining witnesses after a police shooting. They were the family members of the person that was killed, and the police officers held them in a police car and wouldn't let them leave for hours. And they also lied to them and didn't tell them that their family member was dead. So we have successfully sued police departments on this before, and they cannot legally detain you if you're a witness to a crime.
That's right. They definitely cannot detain you, and you have no obligation to speak to them. It's up to you if you want to.
Ask a quick question.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Okay, well, let me, I heard one, I heard, I think, a female sounding voice.
Yeah, the scratchy voice.
Go ahead.
I'm going to remain silent. Can you say that even if they haven't giving you Miranda rights if you're not under arrest?
Oh, I love this. I'm going to talk about Miranda. Now's a good time. I was going to save it till I get to the arrest part, but now's a fine time. Let me tell you something. They don't have to read you Miranda rights when you're getting arrested. Okay. That is like a TV show thing. You know how you see, like I said, whatever Law and Order, SVU, whatever crap that is, right? And you say that they're saying, okay, you know, you're under arrest, and they put the cuffs on the person. And then as they're walking away, you have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. We all know that, right? Because we've seen it on TV about 300 times, right? But here's the deal. They don't actually have to say that to you ever, unless they are formally interrogating you. And formally interrogating you in Minnesota, and pretty much most other places too, means that they sit down with you. They put, these days they use videotape. They used to use a tape recorder in the old days. They put a videotape and they say, you know, I'm going to read you your Miranda rights now. You have a right to remain silent. And you understand that you have that right, correct? Yes. You understand that you are waiving that right, correct? Yes. You also have a right to an attorney, and you are choosing to waive that right, correct? You know, so they make you get on the record saying that you know you have these rights, okay? And that's what they do. But again, they're only required to do that if they're giving you a formal interrogation, not when they're arresting you, not when they're just asking you questions on the street. And that's why it's important for you to know your rights, because they don't have to tell you what they are. Does that make sense? They don't have to tell you until they legally have to when they're doing a formal interrogation. And let me tell you, I wouldn't sit and talk to a cop without a lawyer present for any reason, ever, 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 and ever. And that's the truth. I wouldn't do it because I know better. There is a fantastic video on YouTube by a law professor. It is the funniest thing ever. You will laugh your head off watching it, but it's so true. He talks about why you should never speak to the police, and he does it really fast. And it's really funny. And he says things like, and even if you know you're innocent, and even if you know you were in another state 3 states away, and even if this and that and the other thing, here's why you should still never speak to the police and answer their questions. And it's very good. I would really encourage people to see that video, to look for it. It's called Why You Should Never Talk to the Police. And just look for that on YouTube. It's a terrific little video. If we have a chance,
Emma, can you please share that in the chat what that movie is, please?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Can you share in the chat what the name of that movie?
Yes, Emma, could you do that, or maybe even find the link on YouTube? That's called Why You Should Never Talk to the Police. It is classic. It is so good, and it's really funny because he says, "And I'm going to give equal time to officer so and so, and he can talk to you." And then when the cop gets up there and he's, you know, and you think he's going to say why you should talk to the police, the first thing he says is, he says, "I completely agree with that law professor. You should never speak to the police." And it just blows you away, you know? So it's a great video. And they, you know, they say why you should never talk to the police. One of the things about being a witness and saying what you see is that it could implicate you. So just keep that in mind. What you want to do, I can't tell you. Again, this is all about you knowing your rights and then making decisions about them. Okay. So I like this. Magic set of magic words. Number 2, I'm going to remain silent. I want to speak to a lawyer. I've used them myself a few times. I've actually been arrested 8 times. So I can tell you about it. It's not the end of the world. It's all been protest related, and all of them, I always got out of the charges, but I've used this language, and I think it's quite good language to use, or otherwise just shut your mouth and don't answer, you know. But no matter what, here's what I've seen people do. I'm going to remain silent. I want to speak to a lawyer, but here's the thing. I was going to tell you about this. Okay. Once you've said this, shut your pie hole. Okay. Talk no more. Make sense? Okay. And part of that does a little bit address, Dewan, you know, what you were talking about, which I think is, you know, this thing about them shaping the narrative about you. People say stuff to the cops. I can't believe it. It's almost like they are confessing for no reason. And so it's important to not give them any pieces of info. I know I'm staying on this slide a little too long, but it's just so important not to give them anything that they can use to shape the narrative, putting you into the scene. See what I mean?
Mm.
So it doesn't help you all the way with what you're asking about. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay. Now, so you've had the 3 kind of ways that you can have levels of encounters with people. Remember, those were the so-called consensual conversation, right? And then the next one was the being detained, and the third one was being arrested. Now we're going to talk about 3 common types of encounters that people have with police. Okay, so the first is a street stop, and that's again where they kind of come up to you, talk to you, have a little encounter and things like that. Oh, what are you doing around here? You know, can I see some ID? What were you going to say to those folks? Unmute yourself so I can hear it.
Officer, am I being detained? Or am I free to go?
Yes, that's it. That's it. Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? And then you walk away. Walk away. You know,
So what if they say you've been detained?
well, then at that point, then they're going to handcuff you, and they can, you know, look you over right quick. And if they see any bulges, they can pat the outside of your clothing, and then they're going to bring the person over that is accusing you of a crime, and then it's going to go from there. So
Okay.
if you're being detained, you're being held for investigation of a crime. Okay.
Okay.
Like we talked about. Yep. Yep. So that's the
How
first
long
thing.
should the investigation last? How long can they detain you for investigation?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that.
That's what I was about to ask.
Yeah, y'all are asking great questions tonight. I appreciate that. So there's no set amount of time, but in general, around 30 minutes. The court cases, you know, we have laws, and then we have court cases about how those laws get interpreted, and some of those come through the Supreme Court, right? So the court cases up through the level of about the appeals court level makes it clear that it's around 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, but not much longer than that. It can't be 4 or 5 hours or anything like that. So, you know, a shortish period of time, 30 minutes maybe. Okay. So you get yourself out of that, and, you know, now you get in your car. Okay. And cars and traffic are the #1 way that people have encounters with police, the #1 way. Okay. So you get pulled, you got out of your, you know, street stop. Officer, am I being detained? Am I free to go? And they go, no, you're not being detained. You say, okay, great. You leave. You get in your car. You're driving down the street. All of a sudden you see the cherries in the background, right? First of all, what are you going to do?
Pull over.
Okay,
I'm
great
gonna
advice.
run.
Pull over. Now, you should try to pull over as soon as you can safely do so. In Minnesota, this is important, folks. Listen up. In Minnesota, if you drive further than a block, you could be charged with fleeing by vehicle. Listen to me for a second. This is so important. Do your best to pull over as soon as you can safely, because in Minnesota, if you drive further than a block, you can be charged with fleeing by vehicle. And guess what fleeing by vehicle is? It's a felony.
A felony.
Felony is a worse crime. So now you're taking a normal little dumbbell traffic stop and turning it into a felony situation, which is a disaster. You know,
Yes.
Felonies are the kind, that's the high crimes that send you to prison for more than a year, take away your right to vote, screw with your ability to get housing and jobs and all that, right? So you do not want to get a felony for any reason if you can avoid it, okay?
Right.
That's important stuff. So don't flee. If you find that it's not a safe area for you to pull over, you're not sure it's actually a cop behind you, because that's come up sometimes too, right? You can hit 911 on your phone right quick, and you say, I have an officer following me, or at least I think it might be an officer, but I'm not sure. You know, can you check and see I'm on highway blah, 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 and I'm driving a blue Ford Taurus or whatever it is. I don't know what it is car. Anyway.
It's set up.
Yeah. Yeah. And find out, because there have been situations, especially out in kind of more remote areas, where people pull over and the person isn't a cop and they get robbed or raped.
That's what I'm saying. It's a setup.
Yeah.
It's hard to win. Unfortunately, in certain situations, regardless of how we know our rights, in certain situations, it's still going to be hard for us, especially as Black men, to win. Because, as you said, in cases where it's like that, sometimes we're going to be forced to break the law as far as going past the block, because we're not going to feel safe. And they can definitely, like you said, they can change the narrative and use it against us, as we said before. And so, in certain situations, regardless of how much we know our rights, it's still going to be a no-win situation because we're still battling in a situation where we might think that our life is on the line. So we're going to push the gas to the pedal and go.
Well, I wouldn't speed away if I could avoid it. I would drive a normal
I didn't
speed.
necessarily mean speed away, but I just meant I was as far as terms just saying.
Yeah, and I would do the other thing I said, which is call 911. I think that's very important. Let them know I've got somebody behind me, but I'm not sure he's an officer. I don't feel safe right now. Y'all need to send somebody over here or something like that. You know, I would do something like that. So that way it's defensible that way. Okay. And I'm always thinking about when we get you in court later, how are we going to defend you from this, right? This is what makes you defensible is when you say that you're not sure that that is an officer or you don't feel safe. That's when it becomes more defensible for us. Because I can throw your rights away on the front end. We can't get them back for you on the back end. Okay.
Gotcha.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay, we got some questions. Go ahead. Because I haven't even got through all this yet, but I'll get there.
Hi.
Okay, so
In Minnesota.
so
I'm sorry. I got like 3 people asking questions. Maybe y'all can do this one at a time. Let's see. Tina, you're trying to ask a question?
Yes, you said in Minnesota, if you drive more than a block.
Yep. Yeah.
What if you had a cliff next to you and you couldn't pull over?
Well, obviously, drive to where it's as safe as they can.
Right.
It's going to be a
that's what I'm
distance.
saying. I mean, that would be unsafe. Would you still get charged for that?
No, you know what? I think what people can do, and I'm hearing an echo, so it's a little distracting, but.
Wait, you're echoing.
Okay, so what you can do is put your flashers on to let them know that you're going to stop. Put your flashers on. You know, that way they know.
What does that tell the officers? You don't feel safe at pulling over?
Well, or you can call 911 and let them know to tell the officer that you don't feel safe.
But in the meantime, you're going to be swarmed by other officers because they think you're taking off.
Right, if they think you're taking off, but we don't have a lot of cliffs in Minneapolis. That's a lucky thing. But basically, you know, put your flashers on so you can pull over safely.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so.
Okay, I had a question.
I'm going to get you to mute yourself, Tina, so I don't get that echo. Okay, go ahead. You go ahead next.
Okay. Damn, I just forgot it just that quick. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Ask it when you remember it. It's okay. It'll be okay.
While he's thinking, I just had a really quick question. Does this stuff apply to state troopers as well, or is this just police?
Oh yeah.
Because I got detained for having a baggie in my car because my crime was I ate my sandwich before lunch. It was terrible, and I got searched, and my whole car got searched.
That is terrible. I'm so sorry that happened to you. And it looks like, Erica, you have your hand up?
Yes. I was wondering, when you were saying earlier that they can only detain you for like around 30 minutes, and then Emma put in the chat that it was like considered a reasonable amount of time and they can't move you an unreasonable distance. If they're trying to do things like that, like if they've been detaining you for say an hour and a half or 2 hours, or if they've moved you across county lines, do you still like stay silent and wait to talk to a lawyer, or do you then say like, hey, what are you doing?
Well, you maybe could ask that question, but I wouldn't give them any answers. You know, one of the things that I always tell people to do is to answer a question with a question. You know, if they say, well, you know, what were you doing around here? Oh, why, officer? You know what I mean? I always say answer a question with a question. I wouldn't, and so I like asking questions, right? I wouldn't, you know, you could say, what, you know, am I being arrested? Because if they've moved you and they've held you that long, you are effectively seized. That means you are arrested. And, you know, if they end up not taking you to jail or something like that, and then you just say, get the hell out of here or whatever, great for you, right? But that sounds like a lawsuit to me. Just saying.
So that's maybe the time at which you. Oh,
I'm sorry, I lost track of the questions. Erica,
how much longer is this going to go on for?
This is scheduled to go until 8.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm sorry, what was your question, Erica?
So maybe that would be a time to repeat, officer, am I being detained or am I free to go?
Yeah. But if you're in a squad car, you ain't free to go. So you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I was like, just trying to think of, like, if you'd been detained for an extended period of time or whatever, what.
Then you're probably not detained anymore. Now you're arrested, you know? So but let me talk a little bit more about traffic stops, you guys. So you've pulled over, yay, got that taken care of. What's next on your list? Should be a few different things. You know?
Stops you guys. You pulled over.
You're pulled over.
So am I being arrested or am I free to go? Am I
Oh, we're
being
not quite there
detained
yet.
or am I
We're
being
not quite
detained?
there yet.
Am I being detained or am I free to go?
We're not
Keep
quite there
your,
yet.
you keep your hands visible on the steering wheel.
Thank you. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to, first of all, reach over your phone very discreetly, turn your phone on for the recording, okay? And make sure it's like, you know, doesn't have to hear, see anything, everything, it just has to hear things, okay? So you can stick it down to your console and turn your recorder on your phone. That's important. Then turn your vehicle off. Place the keys on the dashboard, okay? In the middle, out of the reach of the cops, okay? Place your hands on the steering wheel. Oh, but before you do that, I'm sorry, wind your window up and only have it down about 2 inches. Just lower your window only about 2 inches, just enough to pass things through back and forth, okay? Then place your hands on the steering wheel and leave them there, okay? Now, if you have passengers in the car, they all should know that they do not need to say a word. They can put their hands where they can be seen. Shut your pie holes, everybody, keep them quiet, and lock all the doors, okay? Lock the doors, window only 2 inches down. Now, when you get in a traffic stop, what does the cops always say to you when you get a traffic stop?
License and registration.
Do you know what speed you were going, or do you something like that?
Do you know why I pulled you over? Do you know how
Yeah,
fast
no,
you were going?
yeah.
And that kind of stuff, right? They are looking to do what with you?
Getting information.
Yeah, get you to confess to a crime, right? You know, no, I don't know how fast I was going, or what, you know, they'll say, would you know why I pulled you? Well, was I speeding? You know what I mean? People do that because they want to be helpful. They want to answer a question. Instead, like I said, go back to it. No, officer, why did you pull me over? Answer a question with a question, respectfully, you know, respectfully. Don't act like those people, you know, you see these people on YouTube and they scream and they tear up the ticket and throw it at the officer. It does you zero good, okay? And it can make your situation, in fact, much worse. So again, goal is to come out unharmed, right? So, no, officer, why did you pull me over? Make them tell you. Aries, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it's I guess everything for me pretty much keeps pertaining back to this ID thing. Because I guess when you told me that it was illegal for New York for them to do that it kind of shocked me, because I've current so many instances. I'm also a political activist, and I was coming back from Schenectady with Angie Kears, who her husband was killed by a Schenectady police officer.
Oh God,
and
I'm sorry.
We were coming back from Schenectady back to New York City, and for that we're already on alert. The police stopped us as we were driving back, and they not only asked for her ID, they asked for every passenger's ID who was inside the car, and we were saying that we don't have to offer IDs to you, and they say no, we need to see all your IDs, and we knew that was weird, but for one, we knew that, okay, for one, we're in Schenectady. For two, we're in an area that, like we said earlier,
Schenectady is pretty white, isn't it?
It's very secluded out here, and it was dark. We didn't necessarily feel safe, so we just wanted to comply. Like you said, the number one thing is to try to make sure you get home.
Right. So that's a decision you make, right? You know, yeah.
Yeah, but as now you're saying, as far as what the laws consist of, that's why I want to know, how will you be able to get out of the situation without having to offer your ID? Let's say everybody didn't have their ID on them inside that car. What would have been the right thing for someone to have said in order to get out that situation without being confrontational?
You know, that's a great question. And let's talk about that. I do want to say one thing. If you are the driver, you do have to have a driver's license, because driving is a privilege, not a right. Okay. but we don't live in Soweto, you know, we don't have to have pass cards. Okay, this maybe I'm showing my age a little bit, right, from the apartheid days, right? But we don't have pass cards in our society. You don't have to carry, if you're a passenger in the car, you don't have to have an ID on you.
Exactly.
You know, and you can simply say, don't have it, don't have it. You know, not comfortable showing it to you, whatever you want to say like that, you know. You can even just shrug your shoulders, you know, it'll piss off the cops, but also good important thing is to have all those doors locked. That way they can't reach in and snatch people out and do all the stuff that they do. Keep those windows just up only 2 inches. I think that's really important. But then, like you said, you really did have to make a decision. And in that particular instance, we had that also, because I'm also, you know, you could guess all of us are political activists too, right?
Mhm.
And we were coming back from about 3.5 hours away from Marshall, Minnesota, having been there dealing with a police brutality case there. And we were coming back, it was a car full of us. And I was driving, and the other people in the car were mostly people of color. And it was driving like a van. And so we had a lot of people in the car. And the officer pulls us over and he's like, you know, oh, where you headed, blah, blah, and all this stuff like that. And I, you know, and you know why I pulled you over? No, officer, why did you pull me over? Well, I think you were going a little fast there, you know, blah, 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 and all this, you know, can I see some license and insurance, and where are y'all going? And I just kept, you know, okay, let me get my license and proof of insurance. And here's the other thing. Now my hands are on the steering wheel, right? Officer, my license and proof of insurance, and that's what we have to have in Minnesota, by the way, license and proof of insurance. My license and proof of insurance are in my purse. They're over here on the right on the floor. May I reach for it? I always ask that. And all these people look at me like, you know, you're a white lady. Why would you ask me a ridiculous question like that? Because, you know, you don't shoot your kind of people, right? I get that, right? I totally get it. But I still do this stuff anyway, because I want to show a proper example for people, but also because I want them to understand that I know what they're about, you know? So I asked for permission. I reached over and I gave him my driver's license and proof of insurance, you know, but I never, ever, ever answered the question about where were we going. I just never answered it. You know, I kind of kept distracting, kept saying other, you know, like, oh, is it okay if I reach for my purse? Okay, I'm going to get my wallet out now. You know, I just never answered this question.
And like what Aries was asking, like, you know, I probably know the answer to this question, but like, does he have any recourse really besides making a complaint that'll probably go nowhere about having them ask for ID?
Probably not, realistically. If they, you know, here's why, you know, you should have recourse, because that is a violation of your rights. The problem is that it's not the size of violation that a lawyer would take a case for, realistically. Right. That's the problem is, you know, like,
it's
lawyers take a case, it has to reach a certain threshold, and that's not a high enough threshold. Just because you know, these cases are expensive and it's very hard to win these cases. So they think about what they can do.
And this is why I was saying what I was saying, because it was like sometimes we have to choose the way to, in order to make sure that the situation doesn't escalate, as opposed to allowing the officer to. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes we have to be the officer in the situation and serve and protect ourselves.
Right.
But actually, I
call it being a grown up in the situation. You know, they're acting like jackasses, and you have to be the grown up. You know, yeah, and that's sad. You're right about that. I agree with you. I think it's disgusting that we have two standards. Probably three if you count the cops, because they never get in trouble for anything they do. So it's horrible that we have these different standards, but the reality is we do. So that's why I teach it the way I teach it. Tell you what your rights are, and then I tell you about how you can think about how you want to exercise them. You know?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, in the Philandro Casillas murder, he did what he was asked to do, and he also acknowledged that I have a gun, I have a permit to carry it too, and he did everything that was asked.
He did.
And so in certain circumstances like that, it can still not come out right, even when you're doing everything that they ask, because of the fear or whatever it is that the police officer has. So, yeah.
I just put something up on our Facebook about one of our cases, Janice Hodge, and Janice was pulled over for a seatbelt violation. She had her seatbelt on, but because she had shoulder surgery, she had it under her arm. And so they pulled her over for a seatbelt violation. Everything was cool. Everything was chill. doing a normal thing. She pulls out her purse, she gets out her wallet, she opens her wallet to give the driver's license, and the cop seized her conceal and carry permit, which we have in Minnesota, seized her conceal and carry permit. Soon as he saw the permit, he lost his damn mind. He pulls his gun out. He's shaking like Barney Fife. He looks like he's going to trigger that damn trigger any moment, right? And this poor woman is scared out of her mind. She didn't even have her gun. She kept saying, "I don't have anything. I don't have anything." And he was insane. He just lost his mind. And so she's an African American woman. She put her arms up through her sunroof to show, "I don't have anything," right? She had her wallet in one hand, her driver's license in the other. And then, and she's telling the cop, "Now calm down. I don't have anything. I don't have anything." And he's screaming, "Where's your gun? Where's your gun?" Blah, 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 and all this stuff. And then he says, "Get out of the car." She brings one hand down to get out of the car. Then he screams, "Get your hands back up." Like she's trying to undo her seatbelt, and she's going, "I'm just undoing my seatbelt." She was the grown up in that situation. It's horrible. And then he took her out. He, knocked her to the ground and did all kinds of horrible things to her. We just got her $100,000 for that.
Nice.
So
Should
yeah,
have got more, but nice.
yeah, she shouldn't have been through it. Shouldn't have
He
had
should have
to.
lost his job.
Yeah. Oh, he did. He quit. He quit a month later.
Okay.
Never to be seen again. Lost his post board license. He's gone.
But see, a lot of things. What needs to happen is they don't need to be collecting pensions.
No, I agree with that too. We got to
They
build
allow
out
them to
that as
resign
well.
with their full pension. No, we got to stop that.
We're trying to get it in Minnesota where if you get fired or you do that type of thing, what will happen is that the money you put into the pension you can get back out, but the taxpayer money, no. So that's one of the things we're working on in Minnesota.
Yo, send me the details on that when you get it together.
Yeah, I will. Throw your
I'm in
email
New York. I'm in New York, and I'm an advocate. So there's a lot of
yeah,
a lot of stuff.
we got to
going
be
on here.
talking anyway, because if you guys are advocates, I want to be talking to you, okay? Because we
Yeah,
like working with
that's why
people.
I want to connect with Aries. So
Yeah.
Aries,
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
definitely.
y'all need to
I was about to say,
connect.
I was gonna say,
Seriously.
since you're in New York, since you're in New York, and this is a know your rights thing. We recently just got passed a bill that if you're in New York, you should know your rights. If you're in police custody, or if you're in the custody of any not elected official, any official, whether it be a correction officer, or any kind of staff that's government official, if you're in their custody and you need medical attention and you're denied medical attention, you can now sue and for a civil charge. We're trying to push for a criminal charge, but
Right.
you can sue for civil charges if you're in the back of a police officer there and if you're saying that you need air or you need some kind of medical attention and they completely ignore you and some kind of distress
That's
happens
really
because
good.
of that, you
Yes.
can
That's
now
really good.
sue them. And like I
I
said,
wanna
we're
talk to you guys about
we're still pushing for federal.
Yeah.
We're still pushing for criminal charges because originally we wanted criminal charges, and we're
Yeah.
still pushing for criminal charges. But at least now we can get into their pockets and when they deny us our medical attention in
Awesome.
New
I
York
have
City.
about 100 things I want to talk to you guys about when we're not doing this. I got 100
Okay.
things. I want to talk to y'all about qualified immunity. I want to talk to you about a bunch of stuff. So
Yeah.
let's connect after this and make sure y'all put your
Okay.
emails in the chat if you please. Okay.
Okay.
Because I really want to talk to you.
Michelle,
Yes. Go ahead.
I hope this is a quick question. So you mentioned about if you get stopped, turning your recording on, and Emma put a link in the chat.
Yep.
I have been on the sidewalk when something happened. Now this was like 10 years ago. And things looked fishy. And I was a bystander. I wasn't involved.
Mhm.
Things looked fishy. I started taking pictures. Cop came over and said they were going to confiscate my phone if I didn't stop. So
Illegal.
what are our rights around recording, taking pictures?
Yeah, I was going to talk about that a little bit later, but I'll talk about it now because I think it's a great topic and we can talk about it.
Thank you.
In every single place, our organization, along with 6 other organizations, took a case up through the federal appeals court called Glick v. Cuniff, and that case codified the right of every single person in this country to document police conduct, and take videos of police. So everybody's got that right. In addition to that, the Department of Justice wrote a letter that's called the Baltimore letter. It was written to the Baltimore police, but it was widely understood. And the way it was written makes it clear that it's meant for every single police department in the country. And it says to them that you have to have a policy directing that your officers are not to interfere with the rights of people to document police conduct. So now, 10 years ago, it was a different scene. It's a whole lot different scene now. And I'll tell you why this is so important.
Oh,
Think about,
so
think
they
about,
might have been correct 10 years ago.
no,
when
they weren't correct then either, but they
Okay.
didn't know, they probably didn't know it as well or whatever.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
But here's the, think about this. If Darnella Frazier had not been on the scene when George Floyd was killed, do you think you would know about that case?
No, it would be
I
a medical
cannot
opinion.
overstate the value of video evidence. I cannot overstate it. We have a cop watch program here where we teach people how to go out in neighborhoods. We usually want to work with people in a neighborhood group to teach the whole neighborhood group how to form a cop watch patrol, and they patrol their own neighborhoods. We also do a cop watch down at club closing time and at homeless shelters and stuff like that. Again, I cannot overstate the importance of capturing your own incidents, capturing other people's incidents on video. Those are vital to accountability. Body cameras are important, but the cops own that footage. Our footage is our footage, and that's what makes it so valuable, because they can keep that body camera footage from you or they can change it. We make our own.
Question.
Go on, yeah.
Yes, so talking about body cam footage, I have a case right now that's currently pending in Manhattan where the police have fabricated their body cam footage in a domestic violence case against me. And I remember all the facts of that night, and this body cam footage and the footage from the buildings have all been doctored. I went through I've gone through 4 attorneys. I sued my first attorney and the ADA in the federal court. My complaint was dismissed for mootness because they got off the case. So the issue is moot.
Okay.
So that was good because those were the main 2 characters that was trying to set me up. So now my question to you is this: me trying to get an expert witness to, like an expert video analyst to analyze this. No expert wants to deal with a member of society who is representing themselves, even though I have an attorney. I didn't like the way my previous attorneys was going. So as a paralegal, I took control of my case.
Right.
I got rid of all 3 of my attorneys. I threatened the other one with errors and omissions. I wanted his errors and omissions insurance. He wouldn't give it to me, and he flew out the courtroom.
Yeah.
So now I got another attorney. He seems to be great, but I don't trust attorneys.
Okay, well, that's a different question. But about the video footage, one of the things that I always think is really important if you're going to get that kind of technical assistance is to get it from someplace outside of the state that you live. The place where you live, I'm just telling you as a paralegal, this is how I operate.
Right. No, I understand.
I always get like experts in other places because the ones here are too damn cozy with the cops.
Right.
So, or else they can be influenced. So I always think it's really important to get somebody from a different state. And we also like when we work with families of people who have been killed by police and we think that there's a second autopsy needed, we always get it done by a forensic pathologist outside of this state. So things for those reasons. So
that pathologist would be willing to come, that expert would be willing to come into that state to testify.
Oh yeah, if you pay for it, they will. Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So
okay.
I'll tell you what, Dawn, you sound like you have some very specific legal type questions. We can talk later about those without you having to share all your business with everybody. That's okay. Okay. So anyway, back on the traffic stops,
Michelle,
yeah.
before you go on, Angela has her hand up.
Oh, I didn't see it. Okay. Hi, Angela. You're a local gal. How you doing? You're muted. You're muted.
Just show you, Malachi, saying hello and thanks for all the work that you do. It's been a while. It's been years since I've seen you.
Yeah, it's awesome to see you. Wonderful. You got that little one there too. That's adorable. So.
Yeah, he's about to be 2 soon.
That's so cool. Thank you for being here. So, so back to the traffic stops, a couple things. So like I said, we want to, the driver's got to show driver's license and in this state, proof of insurance, right? So that's what you're going to give them and nothing more, and that kind of stuff. The other thing is that sometimes they'll ask you, something like this. You don't have anything to hide. You don't mind if I search your car? They might ask you that question. What do you think you're going to say to that person?
I would ask him do you have a search warrant? I do not
You
give you
don't need,
consent to search.
here,
I don't give you consent to search my car, officer.
here's the thing about that. They don't actually have to have a search warrant. There is a pretty famous case
Plain
that,
view doctrine.
what's that?
The plain view doctrine, right?
Well, no, not plain view. Plain view is different. But there is basically in the particular case of traffic stops and cars, they do not need a search warrant because cars are mobile. And if the cop says, I'll get a search warrant. Wait, stay here while I go get a search warrant. When they come back, you'll be gone, right? So for that,
all they got to do is call for the units. All they got to do is call for the units.
But they don't have to have a warrant. Okay, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Bottom line is they don't have to have a warrant. But I want you to listen again for how I asked that question. Everybody, listen up now. You don't have anything to hide. You don't mind if I search your car. Okay. If you say yes, that's the wrong answer. If you say no, that's the wrong answer. You know why? Which part of that compound question, that trick question, are you saying yes or no to? See how they ask the question in a tricky way so that no matter what answer you give, it's not the correct answer? Here's where your third set of magic words is going to come in. Okay. Officer, I do not consent to a search. Okay. Now, this is really important, y'all. Even in law enforcement agencies, which we still have a number of them in the state that do not have body cameras, they all have squad cameras. And you know how the cops come up and they've got that little microphone up on their shoulder? That is a microphone that's going to their squad camera. And so you don't want to just say, I don't consent to like that. You want to say it loud and clear. Officer, I do not consent to a search. You say that and make sure that that gets heard on their squad camera footage. Okay. Make sure you do that. Then if you do that, if they still search anyway, don't fight them. But if you said, I don't consent to a search, here's the deal. If they have to ask, they do not have probable cause to do a search. Okay. They don't have the level of proof needed to do a search. So if they have to ask, they didn't have probable cause. And if you say no, no means no. And if they search anyway and they claim they find something, guess what's going to happen? People like us are going to be able to get your stuff thrown out of court, which is great. But if it's too late, if you never said that, if we go to court and well, I didn't want them to search my car. Did you ever tell them no? Well, no, no. You know what I mean? That's too late. Then it's too late. We can do nothing for you, including that they do plant things in people's cars. We've seen plenty of instances of that. So you don't want them to ever search your vehicle or your backpack or whatever the case is. So together, we're going to say these magic words. You all ready? Unmute, 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 everybody. Everybody unmute. Officer.
Officer.
Officer, I do not consent to search.
Do not consent to a search.
Officer, I do not consent to a search.
Officer, I do not do a search.
Yes, that's the best thing you can do.
Should you be specific in what you're not consenting to a search for?
No, I don't have to tell you why. I just don't consent. You asked me, it says you don't have probable cause. I don't have to, I don't have to give you any reasons. No, the less the better.
Okay.
The less the better. Officer, I do not consent to a search. Boom, that's it. Okay. The less the better. You know, I don't have time for it right now. I don't consent to a search because I don't want you to find what's in my car. Blah, blah, blah. No. Officer, I don't consent to a search. That's it, man.
Michelle,
yeah,
when they come back and say, why are you trying to hide something? You just do the broken record, right?
Yeah, officer, I don't consent to a search.
Because they'll keep asking and try to get you to.
Right. Sometimes they'll ask you things like, you know, where are you headed tonight? And if I can ignore the question, I ignore it. Otherwise, I say, I just don't care to answer any questions tonight. Not without a lawyer present. I bring out the other, you know, then, you know, well, why don't you want to let me search? I'm sorry, I just don't consent to a search. That's all. I just don't. And make sure you say it loud and clear, like I said, so it's picked up on that squad cam. Because then if they come back later and they force you into a search, you know, they pull you out of your car or whatever, and then they claim they found something in your car. Now you've got a basis for us being able to challenge that. It's when they find, quote unquote, find things through illegal searches, it's known as fruit of the poisonous tree. And we can get that fruit of the poisonous tree thrown out. But we can't do it for you if you didn't say no. Okay, make sense? So really, really important stuff. All right, you have had one heck of a day because first you got rid of the cops bothering you when you were walking down the street. Now you've dealt with this traffic stop. And by the way, never argue with cops about a ticket. They're not going to tear it up. It's not going to go away. Take that to court and deal with it there. Oh, I got to tell you my magic trick, you guys. I almost forgot to tell you my magic trick. Y'all want to hear my magic trick?
Of course. Why
Magic
not?
trick,
Of
yeah.
course.
Good magic trick. Okay. So in many departments, not all, but in many departments, cops have certain days of the week that they go to court. So let's say, for example, you get a speeding ticket or some type of traffic infraction or whatever, and you've got to go to court for it. Let's say that it's scheduled for Tuesday to go to court. Have an emergency the day before that's going to happen on Tuesday. You know, I'm so sorry. COVID was a really good excuse for a while, but now that's fading away. But, you know, you could say things like, I had a positive COVID test or whatever it is. Call up the courts on Monday and tell them, I'm going to need to reschedule for Tuesday because I have a family emergency or whatever. Make up something, right? I don't care what you make up. So then they reschedule you and try to make sure that they reschedule you on a different day of the week. If you go to court on a different day of the week, there's about a 90% chance that that cop is not going to show up. And if the cop doesn't show up, your charges are dismissed. I know a bunch of people that have done that here that has worked like a charm. It's a piece of advice. That's my magic tricks. Okay.
But how can you tell which day that the cop is not going to be
whatever
in court?
day you're scheduled. If they give you a ticket, you're scheduled to go there on Thursdays or whatever, just pick a different day of the week.
But it might be the day of the week that the officer would be in court again.
Not necessarily. Usually they have one a week, maybe two at the most. So
Okay.
you know, you're just trying to take your chances. You know, like you know, you're not going to say, well, what day doesn't he go to court? You're not going to say that, okay? then you're spilling the beans on the trick, right? We can't do that. You know, you get it, right? You get it. So okay, so that's you know, but that's one of my little secret tricks. And I had a woman that had, God, she had about 14, 15 tickets and they were all backed up. And she was really struggling because she was almost homeless. You know, she was housing insecure. She had money problems out the wazoo, you know, really struggling. And she had about 14
It
tickets.
sounds like me.
Sound like a lot of people, right? And I told her that trick and I said, now listen, you know, I was teaching the Know Your Rights at a high school or like an alternative school. And she was like one of the students there. And I was like, now listen, here's what you do, you know? And she did it. And she walked into court that day and that cop didn't show up and woohoo, that was the end of that. So she got rid of all her tickets just like that. She was like, she called me up, it worked, you know? It does work.
Cool,
okay.
Cool,
This is what you want to see. So
yeah, I got like $1,000 in tickets.
yeah. Okay, so now you know what to do about it, right? All righty. Okay. So now you like I said, you've had a busy day. You know, you got rid of the cops that were bothering you on the street, you dealt with your traffic stop. Whew, what a day. Now you're home, you're resting, you got your feet up, you know, watching a movie, whatever, you know, having some time to yourself. All of a sudden you hear, police, let us in, right? They're knocking on your door, right? Please let us in. What are you going to do? You're just going to saunter on over and let them in or what? What are you going to do?
I'm not letting them in.
Okay, so you're not going to let them in.
I'm gonna in my house. I will talk to him.
Okay.
No,
I'll talk to him right through the door.
Okay, that's exactly right. Okay, here's the dealio.
He's a scientist. And she does
the Fourth Amendment.
I don't know what that means.
The Fourth Amendment says that your house is the most private place you have. Your house is the most private place you have, which means that they cannot just come sauntering on in there. They have to have a warrant to come in your house.
Facts.
But if you open the door in some states, under some court decisions, it can be considered inviting them in. So you don't ever open your door. Listen to me for a second, okay? If they're just knocking on your door, oh, we have to come in and do a required check. Yeah, there ain't no such thing, okay? If they're knocking on your door, then you're going to say what? You're going to come to the door. You're going to speak through the door. You're not going to open the door, okay? And you're going to say to that officer, what? Anybody know? Fourth set of magic words. Without a warrant, you can't come in. You know, maybe you start by saying, officer, without a warrant, you can't come in. Whatever you want to say like that, right? Without a warrant, you can't come in. Now, what if they say, oh, we have a warrant?
Show it to me.
That's it. Slide it under the door. Slide
Yep.
it under the door. I want to see it. Okay.
Or right on the window.
What's that?
Or if they can show it through the window or
Yeah,
slide
put
under
it up through the window, whatever the case may be, slide it through your mail slot, something like that. Okay. Make them show you the warrant. Now, this is
Yep.
important. There's two kind of warrants that we're really going to talk about. I'm not going to, there is a third kind of warrant that has to do with ICE for undocumented people. I'll put that on hold for a second though. Oh, it looks like Erica's got a question before I launch into my thing about warrants. Erica? Did you have a question, Erica?
I did, and then I forgot it because I was taking notes. I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry. You think of it, just come back. It's fine. We'll give you another crack at it. Okay, so even if you have to, like, if there is no way that they can show it to you through your door, shove it under, whatever, if you go out another door and lock it behind you, walk around to the front or whatever, talk to the cops, that's fine. But don't let them in your house without a warrant. Now, they say, we got a warrant. Okay, let's look at it. There's search warrants and there's arrest warrants. In other words, there's things and people, right? Things and people. So for the search warrant, there's no such thing as find evidence of a crime. There's no such thing as a blankish search warrant. What it will be is it'll be like stolen computers, stolen credit cards, a bazooka launcher, whatever it is, right? Okay. It'll be just those things that are on the warrant. So the other thing before we even get to that, let's look at that address. Is it your address? Is it actually your address? And by the way, if you live in an apartment building, it has to be not just your building address, but your unit address. So is it you? Is it your address? Okay, well, it is. So rather than let them beat the door down, I will probably let them in the house. Okay, let them in the apartment or whatever. But they're only going to get to look at the stuff that was on the warrants. Only get to look for that stuff. And they can only look for that stuff where it will fit. So if they're looking for a stolen grenade launcher, what is that? What those things, the big things that go on your shoulder, whatever, those grenade launchers, right? They cannot look in your little undie drawer. Why? It wouldn't fit in there. So they can only look for things that wouldn't, in places where they would fit, like computers, it's not going to be, it's going to be a place where a computer can fit, not your little tiny drawer or something, right? That kind of stuff. If they're looking for stolen credit cards, now that unfortunately means pretty much everywhere, but you get the idea. So it's got to be for only things that are on that warrant.
Michelle, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
If they're not, I thought that like if they had probable cause, like let's say a neighbor complains because they hear noise or they think there's a domestic going on, or in Minnesota, they smell marijuana or something. Can they still cannot enter? Because I thought they could if they had some kind of probable cause.
Not probable cause, exigent circumstances.
Okay.
Exigent circumstances is if they hear somebody screaming in the house. It really isn't enough for them to just have a neighbor make a noise complaint. That's definitely not enough. But if there's like screaming in the house, there's solid evidence that there was a kidnapping that occurred, somebody's being held against their will, something like that, or domestic abuse, they can use the exigent circumstance issue. This is coming up a lot for us right now because I've got the bill for no-knock warrants at the legislature, and man, have I been arguing with legislators about this stuff, especially cop legislators, good God. But that's a whole nother story.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I also want to just make a quick suggestion to people, at least in Minnesota. I mean, this hasn't happened to me, but pick up your dog, get your dog, because they'll shoot your dog.
Yes, they will. That is exactly right. If your dog goes out the door, they'll shoot your dog. If your dog comes out, it looks like it runs at them, even if it's wagging its little tail and going, the little puppy, they'll shoot your dog. They shoot dogs here like just constantly. It is so sickening. So you are exactly right. And thank you for saying that. But okay, again, if they have a search warrant, they can come in and look for the specific things that are on the search warrant. Okay. If they, and I'll come back, you mentioned the plain view rule, Dawn. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Okay. If there is a people warrant, or what you would call an arrest warrant, okay, it's for that specific person. If that person doesn't live in your house and never has, doesn't come to your house frequently or whatever, because they can do arrest warrants at places where people live or where they frequent. Okay. And if you don't know who that person is because they moved out 6 months ago and you have no idea, then, you know, just say that person doesn't live here. I don't even know who that person is. Haven't ever lived here. Bye. And that's it. Close the door and move on. But basically, that's okay. Hey, can you hang on to your question one more second? Let me just hang on your question for hang on your question for a second. Okay. So couple things about an arrest warrant or a people warrant. They can only look, they can look at any place that a person can hide, under a bed, in a crawl space, in a closet, things like that. But again, they cannot look at a place where a person cannot hide. So looking in your little sock drawer, it's not like you can fold up a person and put them away, right? So they cannot look in your sock drawer or places like that. But they can look anywhere a person can hide, under a table, you know, under a desk, wherever it may, you know, the person may be hiding. Okay, so they can do that. I wanted to mention one more thing though about both, you know, particularly search warrants, but also happens in arrest warrants. There is a thing called the plain view rule. And in the plain view rule, if cops see something in plain view, let's say that they are looking for a grenade launcher, big thing, right? They can't really go in all your desk, your drawers and stuff like that, you know, because that thing's pretty big. But if you say have a bong on your living room table, you know, your coffee table in the living room, they can seize that because it is evidence of a crime and it's in plain view. Okay. So one of the things I tell people, like, for example, if you're driving and you don't want them to search your car, don't ever have an open container. That's for sure. You know, be really careful about that. But if you go to the liquor store and you just go buy a 6-pack of beer for tonight or whatever, for your friends or whatever, I tell people stick that in your trunk. It's none of their damn business. Put it right in your trunk. That way it never comes up as an issue. It shouldn't be an issue anyway, because if it's not open, it shouldn't be. But I've seen where the cops have opened containers to make it look like a person's gotten an open container. I don't take any chances. I would just stick that bottle of wine or whatever it is in the back in the trunk where it's nobody's business but yours. Make sense? Why invite trouble, right? If you have things, I don't care what you do in your home. It's none of my business. I'm not here to proselytize to you about anything, okay? But if you have things in your home that would be considered illegal or contraband, just put them away somewhere. Don't leave them on the kitchen table or whatever. That's all. Easy peasy, right? Then it's not plain view. Because here's the thing, it's interesting. Let's pretend that they're searching for stolen credit cards. And they're searching your whole house and they're going in all your little drawers and they go in your little sock drawer and they see a little bag of weed. They can't seize that because it was not in plain view. They would have to go back and get a warrant specifically for that weed if it's not listed on the warrants. How about that? And then of course, I gives you some time to get rid of it. So that's good. But you know, that's all good, right? Okay, some folks had questions, so I'll take some questions now.
Does the exigent circumstances include if someone's called a safety check on you? So like if someone calls in is like, I'm afraid that so-and-so is going to harm themselves. Does that mean they have the right to enter?
This is such a hard problem, and I'll tell you why. It's not exigent circumstances, but it's what's called the community caretaker exception. So community caretaker is like a concept that has kind of been developed out of the certain appeals court rulings and a Supreme Court ruling, where it says that if somebody is in imminent danger to themselves or whatever, that the cops can enter for that reason. But it is so freaking over abused that we have cops just coming in off of that excuse all the freaking time. And we've been trying to address this community caretaker exception and get rid of it. It's really, really, really a problem because they are abusing the crap out of it. So, but they do, it's not exigent circumstances, unless, you know, if they hear you, if they can see you through a window, you know, with a knife to your own throat or something, maybe that would be exigent circumstances. But if somebody's calling, they just use that flimsy community caretaker exception to do it. And we're trying, that's something we really want to get rid of because it's way too flimsy.
Is that, just out of curiosity, is like the community caretaker like a state rulings or federal rulings?
Federal.
Oh, okay.
It's federal. It's come out of some of the appeals court decisions. And so, yeah, we really want to, we need to get rid of that community caretaker because it gets used for everything and anything. You know, we thought he might be a danger to himself because, you know, he was saying he was mad at the police, you know, blah, 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 you know, it's crap. It's just garbage, you know?
Yeah, we just a 66-year-old elderly woman was just killed, Deborah Dan, in New York City about 2 years ago, based off of that same exact thing. They said she was a danger to herself. Actually, her relative called police to actually save her. I mean, not save her from herself, but they felt like she was in danger of herself, and they ended up shooting her twice on her stomach.
Yeah, it's
So
horrible.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a state statute that we got passed in the last legislative cycle. We wrote it and I'm really proud of it. It's called Travis's Law, named after Travis Jordan, a mentally ill man who was killed on the north side of Minneapolis. And Travis's Law requires 911 call centers to dispatch mental health crisis responders and not police to mental health crisis calls in almost all circumstances. So that's a good thing. We're actually about to start, we're launching an ad campaign to educate people about Travis's Law in the state of Minnesota. And I think every other state ought to have that same law. So, and that would get rid of some of that community caretaker crap, you know? So who else? I thought I heard one more person that had a question.
Yes, I have a question. The shooting of the dogs, I mean, they feel like they have a right to shoot a dog because they fear for their safety.
Yeah, and they just make it up. You know, it's been horrible.
Why aren't they charged when they do that?
Well, why aren't they charged when they shoot humans?
But they should be charged when they shoot a dog. A dog is considered.
They should be charged when they shoot humans too. They should be charged for a lot of crap they do.
Change is coming. A couple of them are already charged.
Well, a couple, but we've had about 460 or 70 people killed by police in this state, in Minnesota, since the year 2000. And you can count on one hand the number of cops that have been charged for killing somebody.
That would be an interesting ally to make, like PETA people. Hey, friends, we don't like that they shoot people. You don't like that they shoot dogs.
You know what? We actually reached out to PETA about this exact issue, both PETA and the Humane Society, and both of them told us that they did not want to piss off the cops and they wouldn't work with us. Seriously. I'm sorry to say it, but that's the truth. We tried to get them involved because they could shoot a lot of dogs. It's really sickening, you know, little puppies and all kinds of crap like that. And it's really sickening. And so we raised that up to these different groups, and they don't, you know, it's a risky thing, I guess, for some people that get like whatever grants or whatever to take on the police. There's a reason we don't take grants. We don't take grants and we don't take government money, because then you piss off these people and you lose your money or whatever. That's why we have all volunteers and we don't have to worry about that foolishness. So that's why we do that. Thank you. All right. So let's get back on what we were talking about. So make sure that you preserve your rights in your house. Make sure you lock your doors. Do not let people just come walking through. I don't care where you live. You need to have your doors locked. Okay. Sorry. That's the reality of things. All right. So let's talk about what happens if you get brutalized and what happens if you get arrested. And we're doing okay for time. So if you have questions, feel free to ask. But basically, if you get brutalized, it's really important that you gather some information. If you can get the officers' names and badge numbers, if you're getting any kind of citation, that information will be on there so you don't have to work at it too hard. Most particularly though, if you see brutalizing happen, even if you can't get the badge numbers of the cops because you don't want to get too close or whatever, take down that squad car number, because if you tell me the squad car number and the date and the time, I can tell you exactly who was driving that car. So make sure you get that squad car number. That's really, really important. If you are a witness to brutality, talk to all the other witnesses. That person's tied up, okay? They're getting their face beat in or whatever, right? You talk to all the witnesses and collect that information. Try to see if you can find a way to contact that person. But I'll tell you what you can do, even better than that, is you can call our hotline and you can contact us. You know why? We have had many instances where people call us up and they say, I watched somebody get brutalized. They got their butt beat at this location and blah, 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 blah. And then we hear from that person that says, I got beat up at this such and such location. And then we put them together. And now we've got witnesses to help that person. And we're going to get them a lawyer. We're going to feed them witnesses. This is powerful stuff. And we've done it many times. That's why we love our hotline, because then we can do this stuff through our hotline, or people contact us on social media.
Is that
It's for Minnesota. It's for the state of Minnesota. Yep.
Oh, okay.
The whole state. Yeah, sorry, we're all volunteers, so we have to keep it to Minnesota. But I want to talk to you guys about what you're doing over there in New York, because this is our thing. We like to hook up with other activists, share ideas and strategies and stuff. So I'm gonna be hitting y'all up after this. Don't worry about that. So
Okay.
I'm eager to talk to y'all. So other things. So like I said, try to see if you can gather info about witnesses. If you are a witness, gather the other witnesses' info, help that person out. Okay. Third thing, make sure you get health care. Healthcare caregivers not only give you care, but they're also historians and documentarians. And you tell them, I got this bruise because the police beat me in the face, they broke my nose, or whatever it is, right? Make sure you tell them that it was caused by the cops, and make sure they put it in your records. And I will give you a little piece of advice. Take a copy of your medical records with you when you leave. If you're on one of these systems like my chart here in the Minnesota, something like that, your record will be in there automatically. You just pull it up and print it out. But if you're going to, like, some of these emergency rooms are pretty cop friendly. So we always tell people to take their emergency room records with them when they leave. And the reason you want to do that is because sometimes these records get changed after the fact.
That's a fact.
I've seen it.
That's a fact. Me too. Me too.
Yep. So you see, this is for you to preserve your rights.
Yep.
DF, you've got your hand up for a while now, so let's answer your question.
How do you find out where the squad car number is?
It's all over the squad car, the sides usually. I don't know I'm not a car person too much, but they call them the back fenders typically, or the front fenders, I think, is where it's the number. And in Minneapolis, the squad car number tells you what precinct they're attached to. So like if it's 327 or whatever, that's 3rd precinct. Anything that starts with a 1 is police administration. So things like that.
That'd be the rear quarter panel.
Oh, thank you for that. Good you knew that, because I don't know that type of stuff. So thank you for that. The rear quarter panel. Now I know. Okay. Make sure that you get pictures of your injuries. Sometimes the hospitals will take them, but sometimes those pictures also disappear. You want to take your injuries when they're fresh, and then you want to take a set of pictures every day as they heal. Okay. And that kind of stuff. Also, you write down everything you remember about that incident, and anybody that witnessed it, they do that too, but they do it independent of you. Like, you all don't have a group seance. You don't have a group session doing it, right? You do it independently of each other. Okay. And something real important, depending on where you live, you may or may not want to file a complaint. Here in Minneapolis, it is useless to file a complaint. The Office of Police Conduct Review, which is the complaint agency for Minneapolis, they have a less than 0.5%, listen to me now, less than 0.5% discipline rate for complaints from members of the community. It is like you are just wasting your time. The other reason I say it's important to think about this question, if you might have a lawsuit, when you make a complaint, you are telling the city how to defend themselves against your lawsuit, and you don't want to do that. So talk to a lawyer before you make a complaint. Don't necessarily want to do that, okay?
They also sometimes, like this happened to me, I tried to file a complaint, and they started targeting me after that.
Yes. They do. They do. They retaliate
Michelle,
against people. Yeah.
Can I say something about this?
Please.
So I personally disagree. I think that people should file complaints. Obviously, I agree with everything you're saying. Consider if you have a case, consider whether or not you need to consult with an attorney first. But it is very useful to document complaints, and that helps us get a record of misconduct. So if that is something that you are willing to do and able to do and you feel safe to do, I think you should, even though I agree with you. I've filed multiple complaints through the OPCR, and nothing happened to them except for one. But still, I think it's useful just as a documentation that we can use against the city to show a pattern. So that's my one reason.
Yeah, I think that makes a great point. Like, if you're not injured enough, so to speak, to have a lawsuit, then I think it makes some sense to complain. If you think you might have a lawsuit, though, then I'd be really thinking like, let's get some advice from a lawyer first. That's the only thing I'm trying to say about that. So, okay, I think that makes sense. Now, and by the way, reach out to your local organization. Like in our case, you can call our hotline, our 24-hour hotline. You could also, in most other states, there's somebody doing work around police accountability. New York is packed full of groups doing that work. And you got at least 2 great people on this particular call right now doing that work that can be helpful to you. Okay. And so that's, reach out to other people. Do not keep this stuff to yourself. It's really tough. What part of what we deal with people who've been brutalized is they got PTSD a lot of times, mental health issues. And we've got specialists that work on that stuff now, that for our folks that we work with. Okay. If you're arrested, we've already said, oh, Erica, you thought of your question? Go ahead.
I would just wanted to throw out that I know that a lot of people don't go to the hospital because they're worried about medical bills, but it is another form of documentation. And if something bad has happened to you, don't be afraid to seek that medical attention, and then seek support from your community if you do get hit with bills.
Yes, thank you. That's awesome. I'll tell you, I worked in a case of a man that the cops came and they threw him to the ground. Sorry, he was an older guy too. And they threw him to the ground in frozen ground, in the middle of winter, so bad that they gave him a terrible concussion. And because he was worried about medical bills, he never went and got that documented. And he had brain injury and serious brain injury. His family said he was never the same after that, but we could not pursue a lawsuit for him because he never went and got the injuries documented. I kept begging him, go get a CT scan. We'll help you pay for it. We'll do whatever we need to do. Go get it. And he just resisted doing it, and he never had documentation. So there was not a good lawsuit there because got to document it. Okay. If you're arrested, what we said before, what were those magic words? I'm going to remain, help me out here.
Going to remain silent.
Yes. I want to speak to a lawyer. And then shut your mouth. Don't keep talking. Okay. Thing you got to know, in jails and the squad cars, in the jails and the Sally Port of the jail, every part of that jail is being video and audio taped. Everything you say out your mouth is being taped. And when you call somebody on the phone, that's being taped too. So if you call your family and you say, oh God, I got arrested at the George Floyd protest or whatever, right? And you say, I got arrested, and your family goes, what? What did you do? What happened? Blah, 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 right? Because that's what some families would do. What happened? Just say, listen, I'll tell you later. Can't tell you on the phone. Just come pay my bail and get me the heck out of here. That's it, right? That sort of thing. While you're in the jail intake, if you have a medical need, you had better declare it right then. If you need medications, if you're diabetic and you need insulin, if you had an injury from the arrest or whatever, declare it then. You cannot just come up with it later. You've got to tell these folks right then. You have to do that during the intake. If you are someone who needs medication on a certain schedule, you've got to let them know that. And for example, diabetics, some of the jails have nurses that can administer it. Other ones, they'll take you to the local emergency room. You'll get a nasty bill. Sorry about that, but at least you'll still be alive. Many of the jails allow families to bring your medication in if it's in a labeled jar, with a proper prescription label on it. They'll do that. Now, in Minnesota, you got to get to see a judge within 36 hours, 48 hours at the outset. And what I mean by that is this: within 36 hours, except that weekends and holidays don't count. So 36 hours, it's a day and a half, right? But if there's a weekend, if this happens on the weekend, or there's let's say a long weekend, like a Monday holiday, right? Which we have. If that kind of situation is the case, then no matter what, you have to be seen within 48 hard hours. And then you get to go there and have your initial arraignment, and they decide on bail and stuff like that. But and you should ask for a public defender. If you can't afford a lawyer, get one with a public defender. Okay, that kind of thing. All right, now here's your quiz. Everybody ready for your quiz? We're almost done. We'll be done in another 9 minutes. We're gonna be done on time. Okay, so here's your quiz. Ready? Officer stops you for a friendly chat, hey, what are you doing around here? What's going on? Can I see some ID? What are you going to say? Unmute yourselves and tell me.
Sir, am I being detained or am I free to go?
Yay. Okay, check that one off. We got it. Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? The officer says, hey, I want to, I just need to look at your backpack, it's a required. What's that?
I do not give consent to a search.
Yes, yes, yes. Everybody else unmute yourselves and say it too.
Officer, I do
I
not
do not
consent to a
give
search.
consent to a search.
Yes, that's right. Very good. There are some private venues that you can go to, like sports arenas and things like that, where a condition of going into the arena is to allow them to search your bag or your whatever. Even courthouses. That's a condition of going in there. If you don't want to have your bags searched or whatever, then you can just bow out of going to that game or whatever it is. But there are private venues that can make those rules. But in general, a cop on the street, nope. They need probable cause for search, and they don't have it if they have to ask you. Okay, so I need you to answer some questions for me. There's been some graffiti around here, and we see that you've got some paint on your hands and things like that. I just need to ask you some questions.
Am I being detained or am I free to go?
That could be one answer, but what could be another answer that makes it really clear that you're not going to answer questions?
Officer, I'm going to remain silent. I would like to speak to a lawyer.
Yay! All of those things will help you. Am I being detained? Yeah, you could maybe say that, but I like the thing of saying I'm not answering your questions. Don't feel like answering your questions. I want a lawyer. Bye. That kind of stuff, right? Okay, officer, hey, we just need to do a required check. We're just checking in the neighborhood. We just need to do a required check of your home. What are you gonna say?
You have a warrant? Can I see a warrant?
That's an okay way of saying it. I like to sort of flip it the other way, just to say, without a warrant, you're not coming in, just to no, I like to kind of do the negative, without a warrant, nope. But you can do it the way you did it too. Works fine.
I'm not letting you in.
That's it, buddy. That's it. But you can do it the other way too, I just don't like to invite the idea of them having a warrant. I just say, well, without a warrant, no, can do. So you all aced this quiz. Yay. So now you know your rights, which is great. You have to think about how to apply those rights, and that's, okay too, right? That kind of thing. We talked a little bit about what to do if you get detained, if you get arrested, things like that. We talked about this already. Okay, good. So this is our contact information. If you have any questions for us at all, if you have any questions now, I'd love to take your questions. We're kind of wrapping up.
I just had a quick question, Michelle. Do you know, like, all these, the information you sent, the documents, are those available in Spanish anywhere?
Yeah, on our website.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And in Hmong and in Somali.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Yeah, we have all that stuff available on our website. So if you go on our website, we have a great website, cuapb.org. Go to that website. And if you go to that website, you can look under, reports and publications, and you're going to see a lot of powerful stuff. You can click on the thing that says officer complaints, and you can look up the names of, we have every Minneapolis officer, pretty much every St. Paul officer, and a lot of other ones from around the state. And you can just click on them. But we're hoping to have every officer in the state pretty soon, because we're trying to get that from the post board. But you can click on there. You can see their whole complaint file. It was what people did when they, after Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd. I knew who Derek Chauvin was because he'd been a problem guy for a long time. I knew who he was. As soon as I saw that video, I knew it was him. So we put up his whole complaint record on our Facebook. But you could also have just gone and looked at his complaint record. Same with Tutau. I didn't know about the names of the other two cops, but because we couldn't see those from the Frazier video. But the other two, I knew who they were, and we put their complaints up right away so everybody could see all of the deals about those cops. And we have lots and lots of that kind of information. So a lot of good information on there. Also stuff about ending police-only responses to mental health crises, all kinds of good stuff on that website. I would encourage you to go there. Okay, so Erica, you got another question for me? And I see James has one as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a follow-up you mentioned really quick. So in Minnesota, it has to be 48 hours period, like even if it is a weekend or a holiday or something? Because I've talked to people who have been detained for like 3 to 5 days because of like a combination of weekends and holidays and shit, and then haven't been seen.
Talk about freaking illegal. That's illegal.
That's what I thought, but
yeah, it's 36 hours. if, like if you get arrested on a Wednesday or something, you're going to get seen, you'll probably get seen by Thursday because they don't like keeping people around if they don't have to, but if they're holding on people for 5 or 6 days, that's some real serious BS right there. That'd be a case that I'd want you to contact us about. Because the other thing we do is we do a lot of work. I actually am on the board for the National Lawyers Guild, for helping protest arrests and things like that. So those are the ones that usually people get stuck in the jail a long time, is protest arrests. So we are on that stuff like white on rice, man, just tell me. Okay. James, you had a question?
Yeah. If you did end up in jail for any reason, could you describe a little bit how you'd go about asking for your right to talk to a lawyer, and do you recommend any lawyers to call, or?
Well, here's the deal. If you are under arrest in the jail, okay, you don't have a right to a lawyer just inherently. You have a right to a lawyer when you go to court or when you get questions. If they bring you into an interrogation room, they say, hey, we just want to ask you some questions. Then you're going to say what? What was the magic words? I'm going to remain silent. I'd like to speak to a lawyer. Remember that?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. We said that, right? So we're going to do that. And we're just going to say, I'm sorry, without a lawyer, I can't answer any questions. That's it. So the 2 times you're going to have that pretty much automatic right for a lawyer is then and when you go to court. And when you go to court, like for your arraignment, where you go in there and you say not guilty or whatever, by the way, we always recommend saying not guilty. But you can ask for the public defender. They have a procedure for allowing you to sign up for a public defender and so forth. Also, you'll have some access to a telephone, and you'll do what a lot of my clients do, which is they'll call us up from the jail and they'll say, oh God, I just got arrested, blah, blah, blah. And they'll start trying to talk about what happened. And I'll say, don't tell me what happened. I will have the lawyer that I work for, his name is Zoroslav. I will have Zoroslav call you. Don't tell me anything about what happened. Everything that you're saying is being recorded. We will have Zoroslav come and see you. We can do jail visits that are confidential. Okay. So we'll come see somebody in the jail. We are not going to talk about that stuff on the telephone.